The thing on your website, I think, was that bike fatalities decreased after some of the you know, putting white bicycles around.
Sure, I mean, Time's Up started very early on memorials. So we realized that like some of our friends were dying on Houston Street, you know, right around First Avenue. And then when we looked into it, we realized like, oh my God, there's like a lot of people dying at this intersection. So the idea of marking that intersection and showing the statistics, like we have intersections where people are dying, and then people actually had to walk over these stencil bodies, and that got a lot of media attention, and those statistics helped change the infrastructure. Because I think before that, no one really cared where everybody was dying. And they were certainly dying at certain, you know, just the way the lights were structured, the way the corner was, the way people were racing from their cars to the bridges. So that really helped change the idea of infrastructure versus safety. It came about very early on through shocking people with deaths.
Thank you.
This is where Austin and I live. But for every one of those actions, which seems like a silly, funny action, raising awareness about some political problem going on in New York City, you know, lack of bike lanes, lack of police enforcement of cars parking in bike lanes, all the things that we do, getting out.
Is it illegal when trucks park right on top of the bike lanes?
Yes. It's totally illegal, and police never ticket cars for it.
Just on the way here, that three trucks
It's the biggest problem with cycling in New York City right now. There's a saying that safe streets requires three things: infrastructure, education, and enforcement. And basically we have the infrastructure, you know, these bike lanes are being rolled out, and we have the education, people are sort of being informed about them, but the enforcement's just not there at all. And it has to do with this really big disconnect between basically Janet Sedgwick-Kahn, the DOT, and the NYPD and Ray Kelly. NYPD is unaccountable for cycling, you know, they've hated cyclists since critical mass, they've hated cyclists probably since there was an attempted bike ban 25 years ago.
Just this weekend alone, we had a large event, a large ride called the Battle of the Bike Ban. And it was the 25th anniversary of when they tried to ban bicycles in Midtown.
The whole of Fifth Park and Madison, from like, you know, Houston to 63rd Street.
So just a massive section of Manhattan.
Yeah, it was an attack on bike messengers, basically, who were being blamed for all the ills in traffic in New York City, which is just typical of the city choosing to blame cyclists when it's actually cars that create congestion and kill people.
Aren't there small businesses that have delivery people?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's all. There's probably not a big bike messenger business out there. They're all small businesses. But anyway, that's the war going on in terms of the bike lanes and enforcement.
Is that the main reason you got involved in Time's Up, because of cycling?
Yes.
Through critical mass?
Yes, I got involved because of cycling. And I wanted to ride my bike in New York City, but I was too nervous. I was nervous to go on the streets. And Time's Up helped me with group rides. One of the things we do is group rides to help people get more comfortable riding in the street.
So there are people who go on rides that are not advocacy rides, but fun rides, so to speak, or encourage bike riding.
We have a couple kinds of fun rides. We have like the dance rides, where we pull out the sound bike and we're just playing music and dancing from park to park. And then we have the rides like the Central Park and Prospect Park Moonlight Ride, which are just like these tours of Central Park at night, and Prospect Park at night, that are really beautiful. And some people, you know, who don't do any direct action or their own bike maintenance will come on those. And then we have the very pointed direct action rides, and those typically don't include like the general public or, you know, non-Time's Up members. It's kind of like a core of us because we're doing performance art and it's like a little bit scripted. You know, sometimes it's obviously more like a rally and we're trying to get as many people as we can, like the critical mass.
Like the fountain rides?
The fountain ride is pretty open, and that's like a borderline political ride, you know. Some people just come on that because it's fun and they don't care about the politics of public space or privately owned public spaces.
So in 1995 started this thing called group rides, where people said it was incredibly unsafe to ride by themselves. So this is my job at Time's Up, to come up with these ideas, these concepts for the future. And the idea was to come up with these calendar events that where people would ride together, and not people wearing spandex, just regular people who grabbed the bike, grabbed their friend, and had a sound bike and made it all fun. And they were short, fun group rides, all different types. Moonlight rides in parks. So for the first time now, people go on bike rides at night and have fun. that was never an option.
Were they always at night, or were they in the day sometimes? Were they always at night?
No, but they had this amazing option for the first time to do a community event at night, which hadn't been readily available in New York City. And it was a moving community event, really fun. So we had tons of rides at night, from dance rides to park rides for people who felt unsafe. We still do the Moonlight Ride, and it's really famous. 100 people come a month.
And it was mainly by word of mouth, do you think?
No, we had printed stuff. We word of mouth printed. I think there was no internet at the time. So that helped get more people on bikes. So it was slow. It took years.
And there was a calendar.
Yeah, and once they started coming, then they felt like empowered to commute to work, to do this. It was kind of an underground cult, mostly started in the East Village, of people biking together.
And then I started going on the Critical Mass ride.
So tell me about that Critical Mass ride when you got involved.
Okay. So just so you know, the Critical Mass is not a times up ride. We just promote the ride. We promote all group rides, and I got involved in that ride because I love, first of all, it just brought out a lot of different people. Again, it was interesting. It was actually something that attracted me to the ride that brought me back to that time in the Battle of the Bike Band, where everybody was a wide variety of people from the biking community.
Were you there when the bike ban happened?
No, but I'm just saying that that's what attracted me to the Critical Mass ride, and it was a fun ride. I didn't know many people, and I was a new cyclist, and it brought me into the bicycling community. So that's what attracted me to the ride. I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was hard. It was much harder to bike back then.
When was this, in the 90s?
Let's see. It was about the beginning of 2000, maybe toward the end of the 90s.
And there were a lot of people.
It was pretty slow. It was small when I first started.
It started rising slowly. We were looking into this thing that was starting in California. We interviewed Chris Carlson. I went over there and interviewed myself, and it was called the Critical Mass. It had incredible success at going into a city where biking was not very good, and this city was the worst. The police, the danger factor, and changing it faster than the group bike rides. Because there was no route, there was no leaders, people felt like it was a real community. So the Critical Mass rolled into the city. It had a little bit of trouble in the beginning. It took years to get it off the ground. Times I've started adding some color, say sound bike rides, music rides, after parties, but not really controlling the ride, just giving a place for people to go to after. We also tied it into the community gardens and let people know, hey, it started increasing. All of a sudden, thousands of people were coming on this ride.
2003 was Bike Summer, and it really blew up. That's when it got huge. It went into the thousands.
But what it really did was speed up the increase in cycling. And then, bam, around 2004-05, the city cracks down. Why would they crack down on such a successful event? There was lawsuits, there were arrests.
That August in 2004, was that a protest against the RNC?
Well, Critical Mass is a really free-flowing thing, so I don't think that you could say it was, I don't think it was a protest, but it was only because coincidentally, it was the same time as the Republican National Convention. So I personally didn't see the Critical Mass as a protest of the RNC, but it just happened that a lot of people were coming into town, and a lot of people were there to speak out against the RNC.
Because people were protesting anyway. There were other protests going on.
Yeah, it was huge. So many groups were in town. I mean, it was huge. The ride was pretty much filled with people, filled with visitors from out of town for the Republican National Convention, and the city the city just completely overreacted, and were concerned about this bicycle ride that was happening in the Republican National Convention. We were just going out for a peaceful bike ride, just to emphasize, whatever statement you want to make. I think most people are just there to say, biking is great. It's great for your health. It's good for your pocket. There's no money. It was just a celebration of biking. That's pretty much what it was about. And the city totally overreacted. and got out of control. They arrested almost 300 people.
I was riding in San Francisco in 2004. We were about to go down Lombard Street, which is that windy street of tourist fame. And somebody at the top is on the phone, and they get up above the crowd and they say, 500 cyclists were just arrested in New York City. And I'm like, oh. Then we go down the street, and it was really awesome. But we're like, wow, people being arrested for doing exactly what we're doing, but in New York City.
You mentioned closing off lights or blocking lights.
Yeah, it's called corking.
Corking, right. So is that for safety reasons? Was that premeditated, or did that just happen spontaneously?
It just happens naturally, a lot of these things.
Because there's so many bikes.
So many people on bikes, and the cars, the light changes, why break up the light? So it keeps it again. It's kind of like a funeral procession.
Would it be dangerous if everyone tried to stop at all the lights?
You know, I don't really have a
Or, like,
personal
stay
opinion on
on-
that. It's just, it seems to be safer to keep people together sometimes. It's a pretty hostile city.
Yeah, because I read all the, the New York Post op-eds that you had on your website too. What made you want to get involved with any of these things?
Well, I started riding Critical Mass in San Francisco. Excuse me, it's very rude to eat a bagel, right?
No, it's cool. It's cool.
I gotta have some of this coffee though. Anyway, since a young age of 16, I opted out of the car culture, understanding that there's threats to the environment, such as the hole in the ozone layer.
So you never drive a car?
I don't know how to drive a car. Though I was stopped by NYPD truck enforcement today. Trying to bring this coffee here. I've been a bicycle commuter for a long time. I kind of dropped it when I started school in San Francisco for a couple years, but then got back into it thanks to a friend who gave me a bike, and she was an anarchist from Oregon, and she, clued me in about Critical Mass, which started in San Francisco. Critical Mass is having its 20th anniversary celebration in San Francisco at the end of this September. I will not be able to go, but Time's Up people will be attending. And yeah, it just turned me on, riding around San Francisco on a road bike, really commuting, schlepping things around, getting from point A to point B, really, fast and fun and sweaty and exercise and outdoors. It was great, and doing it with a huge group of people, you met all types of people. Critical Mass is a beautiful community gathering because anything is possible. You don't know who's going to show up. It doesn't leave on time. It's highly disorganized or self-initiated. It's dependent upon people who are going to take initiative to do things. And when you have a lot of people, that energy builds and kind of happens on its own much more readily. Right here we have a handful of people trying to stop this fracking Spectra pipeline. But imagine if, last night there was 200 people, and the energy to do something and to act, to have even joyous human interactions and community, is much more great when you have a mass of people. So
After the RNC, you could say the city, but it was the city, but it was the NYPD that really didn't want the ride to happen anymore. They were embarrassed. They got a lot of bad press during the RNC. They lost a lot of lawsuits. So what happened was, it was actually the Bloomberg administration was in.
Oh, that's
office,
right.
And they were losing in the streets. They were losing in the court. They were losing public opinion. So they decided, okay, we're going to make our own rule up. There's no vote. Nobody votes on this rule. The city council is not involved. The NYPD decided to have a rule that more than 50 cyclists need a permit to be on
Was
the
it
road.
just cyclists or people gathering?
Well, there was also people gathering, but I don't remember offhand the numbers for people gathering. So it was a real attack on First Amendment rights. To me, that was really a major disappointment when they passed that rule.
yeah, they arrested masses. They violently kettled and arrested hundreds and hundreds of cyclists, beginning a long period of criminalization of New York City critical mass.
But then, eventually we won, and they got a new
the city con woman.
Yeah, a new DOT commissioner, and then said it was all their idea.
About the bike movement in general. I don't know, the bike movement in general in New York City.
I think it's in a really good position right now. You know, things might get a lot harder when Bloomberg leaves and Janet Sedekon steps down or is fired, or however you want to look at it. She'll probably move on to bigger things. Hopefully she'll become the national DOT chair. That position will probably be open and she'd be the perfect candidate.
Of course now, thanks to the pressure of thousands and thousands of people riding in critical mass in New York City, prior to and shortly after 2004, before everyone just got tired of being arrested and brutalized, you know, we now have all these bike lanes. We now have a bike share coming in theory. Bikes are big. Bikes are what makes sense for New York City, and you know, the community, the networks that were built in critical mass between transportation alternatives, between Time's Up, which was a huge promoter of the ride and helped foster the resistance, helped stand up for the ride. You know, that's what kept the community adapted, but it's been 8 years of police brutality. It's leveled off. There's not so much violence. That incident in 2008, which was my first critical mass, like that was the last really brutal act of police violence in recent memory, as far as I know, because I've attended critical mass religiously, almost.
You know, there's a lot of different types of advocacy going on in New York City. TA is doing a really great job. You know, just advocating for more bike lanes, getting signatures. We're doing a really good job pushing the envelope on the street with direct action. You know, we get cycling news in the press a lot. Having free workshops obviously empowers a lot of people and gets people more into bikes. There's a big cultural movement behind cycling in New York City. You know, all the pieces are coming together. The hardest fight is definitely getting proper enforcement for bike lanes and for traffic infractions and for people who are killed by automobiles. That's probably the most devastating thing to deal with in New York City, when people are killed by automobiles and NYPD does nothing to investigate or charge drivers. I think that's our biggest setback right now.
And the Village Voice writes about it.
Everybody writes about it. We write about it, put the word out there. But I think, you know, the most important thing that could happen for a cycling movement is happening in New York City. We're getting new riders on the streets all the time. And I think we're helping out with that by giving people a cheap, free way to fix their bike here, and by organizing group rides that make it feel safer, even if it is a little dangerous to ride your bike out there, and by making it fun. You know, everybody wants to be part of a fun movement. I think that culture is really catching on. People see bikes as a fun, environmental way to get around.
And so, like you said, tomorrow there's going to be a workshop, right? So what is that workshop?
Well, actually, tonight there's a workshop. It's actually a class. It's the Women in Trans Only repair class. So we have the repair classes, which happen 3 times a week. There's an open one in Manhattan on Monday nights, Women in Trans Only on Tuesday nights, and then an open one on Sunday nights. And they're a series of 4 classes that happen every month. So you know, those 3 repeat each week.
I saw that on the calendar, and I don't know if it said only. I just saw like women in trans, so I was like, do they mean women in transportation or women and transgender people?
Women and transgender people.
Okay.
And so that one's tonight. That's on a 4-week rotation. It's basics, then wheels and spokes, then gears and brakes, and then cups and cones. So it's on this 4-week rotation where we teach that class, you know, each first, second, third, fourth week of the month.
And they're free classes.
And those are free. And then tomorrow night is the open workshop, where people can bring their bikes and use our tools and talk to our mechanics and fix their own bikes.
So you learn how to do it yourself, basically.
Yeah. Well, the classes, it's best if you can come to the classes, learn how to do it, and then show up at the open workshops and do it yourself. But a lot of people show up knowing nothing about their bikes at the open workshops, and we won't do anything for people, you know, we don't like, I'm not going to fix somebody's brakes, but I'll say, you know, what you need is that 8mm Allen key, you know, loosen that, and then they can do it all physically themselves with me explaining it. But it's best if you go to the class first so that you can come in and do it yourself, and I'm just there for the bigger problems.
I'm on video.
Do a Time's Up interview right now in front of us?
Mike? Yes.
Great.
It's so hard
It's
for
like
me to...
watching TV.
It's good side. It's so hard for me to make the time to stop and sit down and talk